This is entitled Insurance AI and the Innovative Tech, this is in the lead up really to that event, the Insurance AI and Innovative Tech USA 2020 event in May. So we'll talk about that in a moment, but I do want everyone to at least note the URL at the bottom of the image on your screen. That's where you can find out more about this really great event that's going on in May in Chicago. And this webinar, Inundated by IoT, how carriers can leverage 1 trillion IoT devices. Think about that for a second, with Nationwide, CNA, and Everest Re. And I'm joined today by David He, Dr. John Almasan, and Sandeep Bajaj from those three companies. I'm Brian Falchuk. Some of you may know me from past webinars or other Insurance Nexus events. I am the managing partner of Insurance Evolution Partners and been around the industry for 20 years. I was also head of claims at Hiscox, and I've spent time on the InsurTech side at a company called Hi Marley. I am also working on a book right now that's sort of topical for the things we're talking about today, all about how we as carriers can evolve and innovate despite a lot of the handcuffs and headwinds that we face in the industry through regulation and legacy systems and maybe some cultural constraints that we face, and in the face of the disruption that is going on in the industry from some of the new entrants, new technologies that are rising. So I'm personally very interested in this conversation today, and I think it's going to be a really exciting one. I know we've got some great things to dig into. To set the stage a bit, if we think about the context here, I mentioned the 1 trillion devices. That's just by 2030. And within the next 5 years, it'll be 50 billion IoT devices. So even that is staggering. But 5 years from then to get another 20x increase, there's a lot of activity here. And insurance carriers are really perfectly positioned to exploit this data to use it for positive effect, to personalize products, engage customers, and more accurately assess risk. But over 3/4, so 76% of carriers say that they're not ready for that. So despite not being ready, we also can't really afford to wait because these things take time to develop the right approach to, build up the data, the models, the products and solutions. And so an agile mindset and tech infrastructure are really required to leverage this data, and it has to be embedded starting today. So I'm very lucky to be joined by John Almasan, AVP and Head of Actuarial Advanced Analytics from Nationwide, Sandeep Bajaj, the CIO for the Everest Re Reinsurance Division, and David He, the VP of Artificial Intelligence for CNA, to explore how to prepare for this influx of data from all of these devices. I can't get over that stat, 1 trillion by 2030. Becoming an agile operation is one of the things we'll talk about. How do you set an innovation mindset from the top down by rewarding collaboration, flexibility, individual ownership of change? These are all great things to talk about, and I think a lot of us hope for, but it takes a cultural shift. Another topic we'll dig into is how do you build an adaptable foundation? So banishing those legacy systems that we all bemoan, and as much as we move forward, a lot of us still have them at play within our carriers. So how do you get rid of them forever with a dynamic tech infrastructure capable of rapidly adopting some of these new technologies as they emerge so we can take advantage of the opportunities out there? And lastly, the question that I think a lot of us come back to is around ROI. So how do we spend wisely for maximum ROI? You have to prioritize your InsurTech investments with your future needs really at the front of your mind to anchor your strategy to achieve those long-term objectives and make sure that the spend you're putting in really does deliver on the change you seek, but also obviously the financial return that you have to bring in to be able to continue to push forward. So it's going to be a really rich conversation. We're going to start off with Dr. Almasan. So Dr. John Almasan is a machine learning engineer and an academic lecturer. He joins us from Nationwide Insurance, where he's AVP and Head of Actuarial Advanced Analytics. His professional experience includes the development of AI, ML, and DL solutions at Nationwide, American Express, Bank of America. And his focus is on enabling the acceleration of AI adoption, as well as employee cross-training, right, which is critical so that we can make use of these things. In addition, Dr. Almasan is a member of the Board of Advisors for Arizona State University for the W.P. Carey School of Business. He's an adjunct professor with Grand Canyon University and Southern New Hampshire University, and he teaches graduate AI classes on predictive and prescriptive analytics. He holds a DBA in Information Systems from Columbia Southern University and several certificates in AI, ML, and DL. And he's also a reserve with the Arizona Department of Public Safety Counterterrorism Division. So with that, I will hand over to Dr. Almasan.
Thank you so much, Brian. I thank you for the introduction, and hello, everybody. I'm very happy to be here today, and certainly the topics that Brian just highlighted a few seconds ago are really critical. And I like the fact that Brian highlighted the shocking number of trillions and trillions of devices, but I believe that even more important than the number of devices that we are going to be surrounded every single day in everything we do is the data that actually is generated by these devices. How can we manage these huge amounts of data? I'm talking about predictions for 2020. It's 44 zettabytes of data per year. It means, just to give you a number, about 40 times more kilobytes of data generated every single day compared to the observable stars in the universe. So we are talking about ginormous amounts of data that are going to be made available for all of our companies to make use of. And we all know data is the new gold. And unfortunately, raw data like raw gold is unusable. We cannot make decisions, and we cannot bring the value of data. We cannot make quick insights into the data without cleaning the data. So now switching back to the first topic that Brian brought in the beginning of this discussion, how to become agile, how to switch actually from traditional type of operation to agile operating models. And thinking about this, my mind, especially with the domain knowledge and in the AI ML deep learning, moves me directly to scalable AI. I think all companies realize that while data is the gold, the ability to make decisions quicker, faster, and better informed, educated decisions is key for them to remain competitive, and more importantly, to build that specific competitive advantage by leveraging their own data as well as external data. We know now we have social media, news, and everything that can be quickly transformed into powerful insights for better decisions. So now looking into shifting the mindset or shifting from traditional type of operating models into the agile operating models. Based on my experience, this is not something trivial, and certainly most of the organizations are struggling to make these changes because they are actually fundamental changes which involves culture of the company, involves technology, and certainly involves processes and skills. And now I mentioned skills last, but they might be actually the weakest link. And I'm going to cover later on why. And based on my 20+ years experience in primarily Fortune 100 companies, I realized that actually there are several milestones that most of the companies are trying to achieve in order to get to the scalable AI and to become purely agile. Ideally, when we mention scalable AI, we are referring to the fact that a company is able to make most of their key decisions by using AI. And there are not too many companies, unfortunately, that are at that level because they have to go through several milestones. And here are some of the milestones that I actually put together based on my experience, which is, of course, everything starts with digitization and digitalization, which means transformation of asynchronous data into digital data and then making use by using some specific tools to access this information. The next thing is, of course, data curation. We are sitting on mountains of gold, but like I mentioned earlier, without having the ability to curate this data, the value of data is not going to be achieved. So we won't be able to make use of that specific data. Even though after the data is available and curated and clean and nice, the next big challenge, and most of the companies are spending large amounts of money and time, is to build access to the data and to ensure readiness of data to be consumed. And this is a big challenge because we have to ensure, especially looking into analytics in the next milestone, how can we make that specific environment reusable, repeatable, and scalable, so we can ensure that once we build the next milestone, the insights, which includes advanced analytics, of course, descriptive, predictive, and prescriptive analytics, how can we ensure that actually we can process the data and make quick use of the data for our decisions? So most of the companies actually, they stop once they reach the insights milestones or the advanced analytics milestone, when they actually can in silo get access to curated data and make good decisions. Unfortunately, the last challenge, or the biggest challenge for most of the companies, building scalable AI, which, like I mentioned earlier, scalable AI means ability to make all key decisions by using AI and using the power of AI to make more educated and more faster decision in our daily business. So now, as I mentioned earlier, we have three key components that we are going to tackle when we are going to do this fundamental changes. Culture is first, and when it comes to culture, it's very important, first of all, to start from top down. We need to ensure that our leaders, both technology as well as business leaders, are fully understanding what is AI, ML, deep learning. They need to understand also how these tools can actually empower them and their organization to be successful. And also, they need to understand how they can promote and empower the bottom-up driving of these solutions. And while they are looking into promoting and empowering the lower level engineers and subject matter experts, people with the domain knowledge, people that are actually facing the customers, it also requires some support for these individuals at the bottom of the pyramid. And usually, if the company is able to have that kind of openness to change and mindset that actually empowers lower levels employees to make decisions rather than just deliver, I think that's going to create that type of agility and, more importantly, innovation. Moving the decision at the bottom of the pyramid and enabling the blending of the domain knowledge is actually driving faster, better products, and many times actually it drives innovation. Another big cultural change is regarding breaking the silo barriers. I believe most, if not all of us, went through different phases in our different organization changes. Thinking about most of the companies, traditional companies are pretty much working in silos. Like we have a silo technology, we have a silo risk, we have a silo compliance, silo product team, sometimes silo project team, and all of them are trying to get insights about the customers, what they do. The problem is, how are they going to achieve immediate information or see immediate information about the customer so they can actually act quickly on this direction? And I know I'm looking at the time right now. I know I went a little bit more than I wanted to, so I'm going to go quicker right now to the processes, technology, and skills. So when it comes to processes, we know that agile processes are not always fast, and certainly they are not predictable. In agile companies, we need to ensure that our processes are built in such a way that allows us to have fast failing as well as quick learning too. And that will give us a transformational change that enables us to respond quicker to the customer needs. When it comes to technology, it's imperative for us not to look at technology as continuous adoption of cutting-edge technologies, but rather on how we can actually make use of technology, of current technology, to build new applications. Bringing new technology obviously brings some perspective of implementing faster, better, and sometimes innovative solutions, but certainly it takes longer time and certainly takes longer training time for employees, and which brings more costs. And not always new technologies will bring the best return on investment. Now, when it comes to the skills, this is the area which I believe is the most complicated, because as we all know, on the short term, AI skills are considered primarily by most of the companies, specifically technology and even fintech, insurtech technologies, they are looking at them as commodities. We can hire in the short term a contracting company, or even make use of all the AI services that exist on the market right now, all cloud solutions and dozens of companies that provide AI as a service. Unfortunately, short term enables us to kick off a project, maybe build some products or features of a product, but we still require the long term to make changes to keep that knowledge in the house, and more importantly, to enable us to continue the growth without experiencing high prices or high costs. So that's why we have to hire on the medium term some employees. Well, in order to get to scalable AI, this is the tricky part. We have to actually prepare our employees. We have to actually cross-train and upskill employees in order to ensure that they are having the right education, not only to make use of these AI services or the products that are built by specialized employees, but more importantly, they should be enabled in time with the right education, with the right training to build solutions, because they do have not just the new education, but more importantly, the domain knowledge. So they can become innovative, and the company can be more responsive to the customer needs, to the environment challenges, and that's how the companies can actually become more competitive. So I'm going to stop here. I know I went a little bit over my time, so Brian, I will switch it back to you.
Thank you very much, John. Let's move right along to Sandeep Bajaj. So Sandeep is the Chief Digital Officer at Everest Re, and he's the Divisional CIO for the Reinsurance Division. After graduating from Mumbai University with a degree in electrical engineering, Sandeep held various leadership roles within the insurance and reinsurance space. Working at Everest Re since 2006, he's held different roles in insurance, ERM, through to his current roles in the reinsurance division and overall with his Chief Digital Officer hat. And I love this part of his bio, especially because it's a reminder that we're all people in insurance and we're not just about numbers and risk. Outside of work, he enjoys golf, ping pong, and traveling with his family. So on that note, let me pass it off to Sandeep.
Thank you, Brian. Thanks for the introductions. I wish I had got some more time to play golf and ping pong and travel in this time and age, but to the topic, it's a pleasure to be part of this esteemed panel. And before I start my conversation and discussion on this topic, just want to have a disclaimer that today's discussion from my part are my personal opinion on the topic and are not reflective of Everest Re and its affiliates. John touched upon some interesting attributes about IoT and the 50 billion devices that we are going to be looking at by 2050. I would break the topic down into two parts. The way I look at IoT and the data that it generates is more as an emerging risk on one hand, as well as an opportunity on the other hand. And for organizations, you can leverage both and or focus on one or the other. When I say emerging risk, one of the things that we need to be cognizant about is with the proliferation of these IoT devices, it also creates this emerging risk around cybersecurity. While the emphasis and focus is more around being hacked through the normal internet and intranet, these IoT devices also create a backdoor or a Trojan door for the hackers to penetrate into an organization or the initiatives. That's how I view it as an emerging risk. Now, that emerging risk is something that we need to be cognizant about and also find ways to really use that as creating new additional products from an insurance and a reinsurance perspective. Having said that, one of the other things that we need to be cognizant about around IoT devices and the humongous amount of data that's being collected right now is the increased regulatory needs and requirements around privacy and how do we manage and store that information. Insurance, reinsurance companies historically have been capturing data for decades right now, and that has grown exponentially in recent time and ages. So I want to just start my conversation with that mindset that those are the things that we need to be cognizant about. We need to ensure, and I'll cover that in the technology infrastructure on how we want to establish a platform and guardrails to ensure that while we collect all that information, and that's a great opportunity from an emerging risk perspective, it also can be a challenge for some organizations if we don't clearly understand what information we are gathering, how we are using it, and what the purpose behind it is. Now, when it comes to opportunities, clearly there are some significant opportunities that can be gained, and I've had numerous conversations in my different discussions. Is this is what's going to make and break different organizations. We keep hearing about data as being the new oil. We also hear about data-driven decision making. It has never been more real than now. And why now? Because we have been collecting data for a long time, as such. But the key is with the convergence of computing power. Today, an iPhone is as good as a supercomputer a few decades back. The storage getting very cheap, and the emergence of so much data which we could not potentially in the past collect, that has made AI a lot more realistic right now than what it used to be a couple of decades back. So this is something that every organization has to embrace, and organizations that don't embrace that are going to have significant challenges in competing in this time and age. I'll go back in time as such, at least from a reinsurance perspective for us. For some of the reinsurance companies, one of the game changers was going back in 1992 when Hurricane Andrew had happened, and there was an emergence of new technologies and new software that allowed us to do CAT modeling, and CAT modeling became, and that's when we started doing a lot of the organizations across the globe started using modeling in terms of being able to understand the probable maximum loss or the opportunities or the risk associated with these natural catastrophes as such. So that's when I felt was, in my experience, was the initial mining and the emergence of big data, and how do we leverage and make use and make sense of it in your pricing perspectives. And that's where the opportunities get created, both in terms of claims management and risk management, risk selection, risk avoidance, and also as such in terms of customer engagement. Historically, when it comes to data and as such, we have either been looking at historical data to make decisions or doing predictive analytics. Now it is more about real-time data. It is about instant gratification. It's about making just-in-time pricing. And that's one of the things that I think is a tremendous opportunity, as well as a challenge for organizations, because even though as a reinsurance organization, we have to be a step ahead or lock in step with our insurance companies and our cedents, because there is a significant emergence of data that's going to be coming our way, and our ability to handle and process that in order to understand the risk and also any fraud leakages as a result of that. So those are the things that I want to just frame, get the context in place, and before I get onto the main topic, which is basically how do you become an agile operation, right? I mean, and one of the things I always keep focusing on is most organizations do collect data. You can collect as much data as you probably want. There's a lot of opportunities to do that, but what are you going to do with it? And that's why it's important to understand what outcomes you're trying to accomplish, and focus on the business outcomes that you want to leverage, and along the entire value chain, and how you're going to go about leveraging data and doing data-driven decision making in your organization. And that's where the agile piece kind of comes into play. Historically, most of the initiatives, at least on the technology standpoint, seems to be built around major initiatives, creating a data warehouse, creating transforming your legacy systems. But now it's more about trying to find opportunities and breaking down these different needs and requirements into small bites, into small business outcomes, and getting to those business outcomes. And that allows your organization, both on the business and the technology side, to be very focused in understanding what data is required to accomplish those business outcomes. And that's when you get some significant successes. And then you also tend to become an agile operation, because you have a clear outcome-driven initiatives, rather than just collecting the information and not understanding or making those decisions at a different point of time. John touched upon skills, and that's one of the biggest challenges I see, especially in this time and age when talent is very rare and very difficult to attract, and more so in the insurance and the reinsurance space. And that's going to be a continuous challenge. And how do you groom talent? How do you get talent to be more analytical? One of the other things which I also talk about is, like, by 2024, we will have the new breed of business folks and business users who probably understand data and understand technology a lot more than the technologists that we have in the current IT shops, because these new workforce are all born in the 21st century and have grown up with having access to information on their fingertips, and are going to colleges where data analytics and data science is part of their core curriculum. So now, in the past, when we were talking about IT folks wanting to know and understand about business, it's becoming to a point where the business folks know more about technology and IT, and how do you handle and do that, which is also a good thing for us, because it allows us to collaborate and partner with the business and work together. And that's where the collaboration and the flexibility really comes into play in how do you go about accomplishing those outcomes. And that's where I feel is a true agile operation and an agile function. From an adaptable foundation, clearly it's a no-brainer at this point in time, where you have to embrace cloud. You have to really provide the infrastructure. What most organizations are beginning to do right now is wrapping up their legacy systems with an API framework, such that you can actually include third-party data. You can interface with third-party organizations and be more agile and based on your technology foundation, and then also have a scalable infrastructure that can scale up or scale down based on your need, and also be in place as this data explosion continues, and it's not going to stop. So you cannot be thinking just for the next 2 or 5 years. You have to have a long-term vision and have an infrastructure and a foundation in place that can embrace and address those things. And those are the things that you have to be focused on in terms of the adaptable foundation. It's not an option anymore. It's something that is very needed. And the last point is in terms of the spend wisely and ROI. That's something that's not going to go away, even though you may have the fail fast approach. And this is where I think insurtechs can come very handy. And those are the things that we constantly look at. What are the skill sets that we need to groom and have in-house, versus where can we leverage insurtechs and have them bolt-ons? Because I think, Brian, you started up the conversation originally when we were having a sidebar conversation around Lemonade and some of the other organizations. They pose significant challenges to the insurance space, but in terms of legacy organizations, there's also an opportunity for us to embrace these insurtechs and leverage the technology skill sets that they bring to the table, and marry that to the fact that we have decades of experience in risk management, risk selection, claims adjudication, and a strong regulatory infrastructure, and partnering those and leveraging those insurtechs in a very methodical, laser focused, where it provides us either the scale or the technology skill sets, are some of the ways to kind of address this huge explosion of IoT devices as well as data. With that, I'll pass it back on to you, Brian.
Yeah, thank you for that, Sandeep. And I totally agree. I think an openness to working together and seeing who can be a partner and who can facilitate or enable is the right kind of mindset. Thank you again for that. Moving on to David He, VP of Artificial Intelligence from CNA. So David leads the overall enterprise strategy and solution architecture on AI for CNA, as well as innovations around emerging technologies. Prior to his work at CNA, he was the Chief AI Officer at Taikang Online, a fast-growing fintech company under a Fortune 500 group. He also ran the AI lab and big data department there. His organizations built the AI, ML, big data solutions to empower the full value chain of online insurance, including personalized product recommendation engines, customer service chatbots, facial and image recognition platforms, and fraud detection systems. A really rich, broad spectrum experience across a number of ways that AI can be put to work for different outcomes. Before his work in insurance, David worked at Amazon and Microsoft. At Amazon, he directed multiple AI teams working on automatic speech recognition. So anyone with an Echo device and who has a deep relationship with Alexa, David's been a part of how that came to be, and also on their tokenization platforms for Amazon Web Services, which power so many of the new solutions that have come out with its cloud platform. At Microsoft, David focused on data analytics and machine learning and ran programs to build big data platforms for Windows, drove device health improvement using telemetry, data, implemented large-scale BI and data warehouse systems, and developed machine learning models to improve service reliability. Okay, with that, I'll pass it to David.
Thanks, Brian, for the introduction. Glad to be here and be part of this important topic. Hello, everybody. My name is David He. I work for CNA Insurance. CNA is a commercial insurance company. We offer a range of property and casualty insurance products. We are a company with over 120 years of history, have a lot of experience in insurance as well as legacies. Before I joined the insurance industry, as Brian just said, I spent over a decade working at Microsoft and Amazon. At Amazon, I was in the team building Alexa. So you may know that Amazon have sold over 10 million smart devices powered by Alexa. So I would like to share what I've learned from those high-performance tech companies. When we talk about insurance business, the core is to manage risks. From that perspective, what could be more useful than accurate and real-time data? Data provided by those the IoT devices will help insurers better understand the risks, come with better pricing and customer experience. So we can use IoT to develop new products as well as effectively predict and prevent risks. So that is why IoT and AI are transforming the insurance industry. It is an exciting time for all of us. The required preconditions for IoT to take off, in my opinion, are mostly in place. Computing power is rapidly increasing, and the connectivity technology, such as 5G, is maturing. We need to build the speed and flexibility to quickly adapt and leverage those technologies. So where should we start? I echo John on scalable AI and data platform. First, I think the insurance companies need to have dynamic infrastructure as foundation. We can build cloud-based infrastructure to enable innovations, not just for IoT, but AI, ML, and other emerging technologies. People recognize that they can get many benefits by moving to the cloud, including scalability, agility, better integration, etc. When it comes to IoT, you can collect and send all the data to the cloud. This approach will keep all the data, and what you have collected may become a source of competitive advantage in the future. Another approach I would like to mention is take only what is useful and meaningful to the cloud, and leverage edge computing to pre-process the data. So this approach helps to reduce latency for critical applications, lower dependency on the cloud, and save costs on storage. Anyway, cloud infrastructure can be a good foundation that companies can put into place. On top of that, we need to build scalable data platform, including data lakes, data warehouses, BI, and advanced analytics. So we'll be able to collect and process data from policy admin systems, IoTs, and other third-party data. Besides infrastructure and data platform, we also need to focus on improving our agility to meet the business needs. It is not all about technology. We need to set the agile mindset for the organization from top down, as what John and Sandeep said. Many companies have used agile methodology in their project. In my view, there is a difference between doing agile versus being agile. Doing agile focuses on techniques. It's more about following the process, such as Scrum. Being agile focuses on team and leadership mindset, as well as a willingness to adopt new technologies. It is more about living the principles and values of agile. such as how we access to the customers, collaborate across teams, and take ownership on the products. Yeah, with that being said, we want to iterate fast and fail fast. It is critical for us to learn from those success and failures. Especially in the IoT world, we realize that customers have high expectations. So this may due to their personal experience with a connected device, such as an iPhone, an Apple Watch, or an Amazon Echo device. End users are now expecting IoT solutions to deliver similar service. So this means frequent updates, upgrades, and seamless user experience. We know traditional waterfall approach can't meet the customer's expectations, so we need to adopt agile methodology with continuous delivery. This could be a big change to some of the insurance companies and even tech companies at the beginning. I recall Microsoft started to adopt the frequent update model since Windows 10. So instead of going through major releases such as Windows 7, Windows 8, Microsoft started to provide incremental updates on Windows products and use telemetry data from those devices to improve user experience. Another learning I want to share with audience is to automate the software delivery process when possible, from development, testing, to deployment and product updates. That will significantly improve the quality and speed when moving code to production. Besides the technology foundation and agility, fundamentally, I agree with what Sandeep and John said. We need to show return on investment. You know, it is hard for a conservative industry to begin large-scale adoption of new technologies. A more practical approach is to start with small initiatives that add direct values to the business, while having a strategy to prioritize investment for the long term. For commercial insurance, there are several areas we can use IoT to boost revenue or reduce expense. For example, use drones to survey the damage of natural disasters, using wearable device to monitor activities in the factory, or use sensors to prevent damages in commercial buildings. In order to successfully deliver IoT solutions, insurance companies should bring together all parties. We can't do it all by ourselves. The difficulty for IoT or AI is not about using the technology or not, but how to do it right. Taking Amazon Alexa as an example, many companies did speech recognition before Amazon, but Alexa was the first product that was successful in the consumer market. I think execution is one of the key differentiators here. There is a lot that we can learn from those tech companies. On the other hand, the advantages of the tech companies may bring more competitions to the insurance space. So in the international markets such as China, we already observe such tech giants like Alibaba or Tencent get into the insurance industry. Competitions will increase, and insurers will need to bank on deep industry knowledge and data to match companies like Amazon or Google, who have millions of customers and are more advanced on technologies. Those are my thoughts. Brian, I will turn it back to you.
Thank you very much, David. I should have said this earlier, but to throw it out now as we move into the Q&A section, please do ask questions. So you should see a way to raise your hand and ask a question in the GoToWebinar control panel right there in the main interface. So we'd love to get some questions from people. I do have some to kick things off, and I just share Sandeep actually had to drop off as he had something come up around some pressing things going on you guys may have heard of with the coronavirus. I know it's front and center for a lot of us. So unfortunately we lost Sandeep, but some great thoughts from him. I know for me, his point about talent really, that's just incredibly important in the job market that we face for carriers, for tech companies all around. And then David, you came right back to that saying, you know, it's not really the technology. The tools are there. It's more about having the employees ready to go for it, whether that's a recruitment or a training or a culture point, you know, going back to comments that John led with around culture. So I think all three of you, fantastic points. And there's clearly some themes that really rang true across all of the talks. I had a question I wanted to jump into, but David, there's something that you said just a couple of minutes ago that I hung on to, and I want to get more from you on this. And it was around your point that Alexa was successful because of execution. And I can think of a few examples where people were already doing what was done. You know, the iPod's a classic one. There were already MP3 players, but it's how Apple did it. There were already virtual assistants, digital assistants, these sorts of things, but Alexa is different, and the success story is very different, and the way it's been pervasive in so many households and now cars as well and other devices is different. Can you share a little bit of why you think that execution was different, or maybe what the critical points were that made the execution so much better?
Yeah, sure. I think, in my opinion, what Amazon did differently is really rooted from Amazon's culture. Amazon started from customers and work backward. So they have the culture of truly understand what are the customer scenarios, what this product will bring to the customer, and work from there, not just from a technology perspective or from a feature perspective. Amazon will think about end-to-end scenarios, how to enable that. And the other part, I think Amazon is doing very well is because the technology foundations. Many technology companies, they have this flexible infrastructure, as what we mentioned before, that enabled the engineers and the scientists to innovate and iterate very fast. And that's another critical piece to enable Amazon on the execution path. The other things I think I would like to share a bit is Amazon from the organization perspective, why Amazon can work in a very agile manner is Amazon has about a dozen leadership principles that from top down, from Jeff Bezos to employees, all follow. Those leadership principles are rooted in Amazon culture, which I believe is a very valuable asset to Amazon.
That's very helpful. Thank you. I feel like I'm going to look at the little gray cylinder in my living room differently now. The amount of thought that went into making sure that was successful. It does feel different, and it feels like it's a cultural point. John, you were the first to open up with this idea of culture being so critical and the perspective of the customer's position versus starting with, oh, we have this technology or we have these capabilities. How do we make something with that? So I do want to come back to you and specifically thinking about nationwide. And given all of the data, I don't even know how big a zettabyte is. I could do terabyte, but zettabyte, now that is that the next one up from a terabyte, or is that even beyond that?
So thank you, Brian. That's an excellent question. Actually, when it comes to data, each company sits on their own data, which most of the time translates in gigabit, peta, and so on amounts of data. But the good news or the bad news, depending how to look at this opportunity, is that actually the value of the data is when we are able to actually blend internal data with external data and make it even more powerful for our decisions. leveraging just internal data will give certainly a competitive edge compared to what our competition will have, because we own this data and it's certainly an intellectual property. But if we are able to look outside into the big world of Internet of Things, the big world of the internet, and looking into social media news, and then bring back that valuable information that exists into social media and everywhere else, then the power is actually exponentially higher when it comes to making faster and better decisions with our customers in mind. We need to have a major change in the culture of an organization. And I liked the way that David and Sandeep focused on the skills and focused on agility. I think it's very important for a company to think about customers of the future and needs of the future rather than focusing on today's customers. And unfortunately, most of the companies in the traditional approach, they are focusing on what they know. They know what they heard maybe once or twice a year into some large meetings or even in smaller meetings. But the point is they are all having very infrequent and actually less frequent visibility to the customer needs, and they are primarily focused on delivering solutions for the current, for existing customers, not for the future customers. So leveraging internal data and blending it with external data will really empower, first of all, access to the more powerful and more meaningful information that gives insights to the leadership team and to the end subject matter experts of each company to make more customer-centric and product-centric decisions.
Thank you, John. One quick question that I had, and I saw someone else echo, the 40 or 44 zettabytes, is that today or is that 2030? Is that what we're living
yes,
with?
I did say that
right
44 zettabytes of data it's estimated the prediction for this year, there will be generated 44 zettabytes of data for 2020. Yes.
Wow. Okay. So this is a right here, right now situation we're facing.
Exactly.
So there's a number of questions that came in. I'm going to be a bit selfish with the next one, the one that I choose. So my last 10 years were in specialty lines, and I used to be on the personal line side. So much of what we hear is personal lines focused. What about things like employment practices liability, D&O, E&O, more hardcore commercial lines, not just the commercial version of a personal line like commercial auto? Are you seeing anything play out once we step out of that sort of mainstream P&C? And this could be for either of you. I know CNA certainly has a lot of activity in those, professional liability, med mal, for example. So David, maybe one for you.
Yeah, so I actually, honestly, I'm not specialized in that line of business, so I may not have a lot of experience to share here. I think mostly when I look at commercial insurance in general, I think it's been slow in terms of adopting the emerging technologies like AI and IoT in general. So really looking deeper into the customer scenario and see where those technologies can add value, I believe is the key. And we have started a journey, and we've been working closely with our customers to prioritize those scenarios and working together to move into that direction. But at this stage, I don't have a lot of the experience on this particular specialty area.
Okay. Yeah,
Well,
John, anything to add?
I can add maybe similar kind of thoughts to David's. I joined actually the insurance industry only in December. I used to work in financial industry in Fortune 100 companies before, but insurance is something that I took as a new challenge for me as I want to expand not just my learning of AI, ML, deep learning, but most importantly, how can I use it into the insurance industry? So now, specifically to the commercial auto and personal lines, again, this is for me a learning journey, and this is something that I'm going to look forward to learn more and educate myself. But I can say right now, and echoes David's message, is that the future relies on telemetry, relies on those devices that are already existing in all the vehicles, including commercial auto vehicles. And I strongly believe that the future of insurance industry is going to change dramatically with the advancements that we are making on a daily basis in understanding those telemetries, in understanding the data, and more importantly, in blending that data with other types of data, such as how are the safety of our roads, future weather, and future problems with our ecosystems, where the drivers are actually keeping, their routes. And I believe that the future of insurance industry, specifically related to the trucking industry, the commercial auto, will be impacted in the near future because of this large amount of data that exists, either coming from these vehicles directly, but also indirectly based on the routes and based on the activities they are doing. And I think that's going to be very powerful in the near future, how we can actually do a better pricing segmentation considering these features, and how we can make use of this information that right now most of the companies are still looking to acquire and to make use of.
That's great, John. There's a lot of questions pouring in, and we're starting to get tight on time. So I'm just going to bring a couple more to the forefront. But I do encourage you. I mean, this is exactly the kind of discussion, whether it's presentations or just the conversations you'll get into at the event that I talked about at the beginning of the webinar that's happening in May. You can see the link to it right here in the image. This is exactly what you'll get. You'll get more richness on this, and it's clear people really want to talk about it. So please do check out more about the Insurance AI and Innovative Tech USA 2020 event, May 12th and 13th, happening in Chicago. There is a theme that's coming out in a lot of the questions I'm seeing around prioritization and how do you make the call to invest in what's probably going to have a longer tail payoff from today to be innovative and to start to move the needle. A few questions on that. The one I want to start with for both of you really is just the sort of the starting point one of being willing to invest in doing this work, having an innovation team or an AI team or people who are working on the question in the context of ROI, given that the returns may be a few years off. What are some of the keys to get that cultural shift in the decision-making body to be able to start down this journey?
Okay, I can go first on this one if you like. Everybody, as we are businesses, are looking directly to see value, and that value translates in revenues, translates in success for a company. Unfortunately, as I mentioned earlier, even agile processes are not always very fast. It requires a lot of changes, and certainly the outcomes when it comes to the AI and scalable AI, the outcomes are very much not predictable. So if we are looking at the surveys that are right now on the internet published by many reliable companies, it looks like in general, companies are investing tremendous amount of money in technologies, in ensuring that the company is going to make that specific progress they are looking for to stay competitive and be profitable. Unfortunately, if the surveys also show that most of the times they are not achieving what they were proposing or what they were planning to achieve. And that's because, like I said earlier, this is not something trivial and requires three major changes when it comes to accomplishing the right return investment, first you have to become agile, and in order to become agile, the company must change the way they are thinking, the culture. They have to enable adaptive technologies that can be immediately adopting new cutting edge technologies if needed, but also to repurpose the technologies to make new capabilities with the current technologies. And of course, like David and Sandeep mentioned earlier, how do we deal with skills and cross-training and preparing our employees for the future roles in the company as this agile operating model is going to evolve? So the return on investment is certainly indicator of how fast a company is able to make those changes. And without the leadership team to take this role in promoting, encouraging, and empowering their employees, the delivery of agile operating models and, of course, good return investments, it may take a longer time.
Yeah, and I agree with John. I think the leadership team need to realize this is a journey. This is not going to happen overnight, right? So if you want to do AI, you want to do IoT, and you decide to do it today, it won't happen tomorrow, right? So you have to have the investment to start earlier to build your foundation, which is infrastructure, get your data in place, and those are the things that we need to get ready before we can do advanced AI and IoT technologies, and as well as the organization changes, right? The culture change is going to take time and it's going to evolve. So if you don't start today, you may lose the advantage when it actually the time comes that you see the competitors have already been evolved and being getting up to speed with the new technology and taking advantage of that. So I think that's something that the leadership team need to be aware, and as well as the business. And on the other hand, aside what I mentioned before, it's very hard for the insurance industry or the insurance company say, hey, I want to start with a large scale projects right at the beginning. So we want to take small initiatives, and we want to test out the technologies. We want to demonstrate the business values, as well building up the in-house talents. So you need those talents to actually driving the projects forward and working very closely with the business, right? It's not a matter of you doing it or not, you have to do it well, right? You have to win the trust from the business. You have to have the talents that have both the knowledge on the technology, on AI analytics, but also working very close to gain that insight into the business. And that's where we can create a win-win situation by collaborating closely. So that is what I'm thinking is we should proceed.
Yeah. I want to bring things to a close. We have many questions that are still unanswered, but I think that's the point. Is these are deep discussions. There's no exact answer to any of it, and so much will depend on your particular company, your culture, your organization, and that to me is the real takeaway across David, John, and Sandeep when he was still with us. What all of you have shared is, look, lots of specifics, lots of direct examples, and that's very interesting. But the overarching theme is you have to have the people, you have to have them in place, you have to have people inside and outside the company through partnerships and the right recruitment and training and development. You must have the culture. And for a lot of us, that could be the trickiest part, but it's still in front of us. It's still something we can do. And it does take investing in building more understanding, having people see the benefits, being open to achieving them, and maybe recognizing that this is where our window lies. And if we do wait too long, the window will be closed or closing, making it much harder for us. And maybe the efforts to catch up will be far greater than smaller efforts today. And lastly, it's that collaboration point. So David, great final word to bring it back to is that's sort of how you get the people and the culture aligned, is collaborate. So be open. Don't have the silos that we've all historically had. See people as partners inside and out, and work together to try to solve these things. Really excellent points. This is such a big topic. I mean, aside from the numbers that are being thrown around, it's not enough to have a 1-hour webinar. And so that's why I really do, recommend people check out the conference in May. The link is right there, events.insurancenexus.com/analyticsusa. This is exactly what we all as an industry need to be talking about. So hopefully you can make the event and take in more of these insights from people like the panel today. Incredibly valuable content that we all need to be listening to. David and John, thank you again for joining us today, and for all the people who tuned in. Thank you for giving us an hour, and hopefully this is some valuable conversation, and keep the questions coming. We can all connect through LinkedIn and at these events, so we should keep that going. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.